Please rise. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe truth is larger than any one book or way. Religion and science go hand in hand. Integrity requires freedom of conscience. Diversity is something to celebrate. In the struggle for justice, we come alive. Our highest aspiration and calling is love. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever path you are on, you are welcome here. Let's now light our chalice with the words from Ellen Hamilton, Faith in Summer. In faith together, we light this small scrap of light, symbol of Grandfather Sun's enormous power, whose energy burns so brightly in these days of deep summer, catapulting leaf and vines, vegetables, flowers and fruits to astonishing size, lengths and heights, spilling over the tops of cages, walls, and trellises, delightfully nourishing all our beings. We bask in the warmth and the heat of these days with lightened hearts and quickened senses, in gratitude and in faith. Once again, welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. We are so glad you're here this morning, and we are so glad for the folks that are joining us online. Turn around and wave to the folks online. Okay. We have so much going on here, even in the summer. Check out the West Shore Weekly in your order of service about events coming up and how you can get involved. We are excited to welcome our guest speaker this morning. Check out his bio in the order of service, but he needs no introduction. This is his home church, Reverend Dave Clements. And as we welcome newcomers and our guests, we are also saying a farewell or two to some of our beloved congregants. The Christ family is taking a bit of a leave and venturing to Thailand to live for a while, and Ari and Jeff as they venture to Phoenix for educational and job purposes. So today is their last church service. So as we greet each other today, make sure to tell them farewell and bon voyage and safe travels, and come back and visit us soon. So now is our time of greeting. Let's greet each other warmly. Look for someone you don't know and say hello. Say hi to the folks you know during coffee hour as well. For our call to offering today, I'd like to introduce from the Ohio Coalition Against Gun Violence and the Ohio Council of Churches, James Klein.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, that was a good, nice response there. I'm Jim Klein, and I'm here on behalf of the Ohio Coalition Against Gun Violence, which is part of the Ohio Council of Churches at this point in time. I'm here at the request of our Executive Director, Reverend Dr. Jack Sullivan Jr. We would like to thank you for having us here today. I'm about as far as you can get from being a reverend. I am actually a lawyer. But to some extent, I've seen the light. So we're here on behalf of the mission of trying to eradicate gun violence. And the mission of the Ohio Coalition Against Gun Violence is something that I got involved with. Unfortunately, as everyone here is aware, gun violence touches far too many people in our society today, and unfortunately, that is a shadow that keeps touching more and more people as time goes on. And I got involved in the organization because of that sort of a situation that arose when I was in college, in which I lost some of my friends in a shooting in my dorm. Once I became a lawyer, I decided to get involved, and I've been involved in working on some cases to try to foster legislation and promote legislation against gun violence. The Ohio Coalition Against Gun Violence has gotten involved with the Ohio Council of Churches, which covers a number of denominations across the state of Ohio, with a gun violence prevention program. Of course, like all modern-day organizations, you can find out about us. We do have a website, because arranging for a burning bush is very difficult to do in this day and age. So, and the website is actually www.ohiocouncilchs.org. And you'll be able to see there the different aspects of the organization. The first aspect, is, because it is through the Ohio Council of Churches, is to reach out to different congregations across the state of Ohio to help organize and send out the message against gun violence and some of the issues that are touching on that, especially those related to legislation. And the other aspect of it is, of course, advocacy work throughout the state of Ohio. There's a gun violence tool prevention kit that the council promotes and has available to different congregations across the country. And it's putting through different kinds of press releases and information regarding, especially here in Ohio, in which we see a lot of different legislation coming up on a regular basis regarding guns, gun rights, and limitation of gun prevention efforts. And so there's advocacy with respect to the different statutes that are being promoted, and that's where I've gotten a little bit involved, is trying to look at those different issues. So we are very grateful for your participation, your invitation to us here today to allow us to speak. There's a little bit of a message in the program about that as well. And please keep an eye on our website, because it does announce the different events that are coming up across the state of Ohio. We just had the Wear Orange Day, which was June 2nd, which was a gun violence prevention color and day. But hopefully every day is a day in which we're all working to prevent the scourge of gun violence. And God willing, so hopefully it'll eventually be eradicated from our nation and hopefully from the earth. So thank you very much, and we appreciate your offering to the organization.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. The offering will now be taken and graciously received. We are gathered here today to talk about what holds us together. In a few minutes, Reverend Dave will reflect on what is the glue that binds us together as Unitarian Universalists and what is the glue that holds us together as members of West Shore. As I reflected on this topic, I think about what keeps me in this faith. Not only what keeps me here, but what has me returning over and over again. Me here. From the very beginning, I remember coming here in the summer of 1991. I remember being told by one of my bosses, who was a member here, Evelyn Sobachek, that she thinks this would be my place. This is where I would fit. What I felt that first Sunday, let me first describe the scene that first Sunday. My husband, Keith, and I walked through the doors, and guess what? It was, in fact, Baseball Sunday. Everyone was in baseball caps and various Indians regalia, and I found out that afternoon they were all going to the baseball game. Guess what the hymn was? Take me out to the ballpark. Then I just had this gut feeling I belonged. What I didn't know when I entered that door that day, that years later I would feel interwoven and connected every time I came through that door. We have moved away, come back, and each time had to reconnect and reestablish our faith community within West Shore. So I'm not sure at what point did a more permanent connection happen. I think perhaps it was when I began to realize that me not being here on a Sunday morning would mean I could not just sleep in, but that I would be missed, and that I would miss people. So for me, the words deep connection kept coming up this week in answer to Reverend Dave's question. I, of course, was curious to see what Google said. And guess what I found? A UU World, our magazine, article from 2016, where a membership coordinator felt so strongly about connections being the glue, she changed her role and her title to a connections coordinator. Now that makes sense, right? So for me and my family, being part of a church community as well as the larger faith has allowed a bond that once I began to say yes and continue my spiritual path, I had people who not only saw me, but knew me well enough to sometimes know what I needed before I did. I love the connections I have in this faith that allow that level of vulnerability between myself and others. We as Unitarian Universalists do strive to be in a place where we are loved, accepted, appreciated, and called by name. And if we are not here as a part of this community, we are missed and valued when we are here as well as not here. We all have it in us to allow our vulnerabilities to show in order to make the deeper connections that can and will sustain us. So on a side note, last Sunday, my husband Keith, who rarely gets to come to church due to work, was able to make it. 30 years almost to the day from when we first started to come. Do y'all remember what the hymn was last Sunday? Take me out to the ballpark. That was a true moment of full circle connection for me. Thank you, Scott. Namaste. And now join me in our ritual for all that is our lives. Please come forward. These are the joys and the sorrows of our hearts, which in Reverend McCarr's absence will be shared with Kathy Strausser, head of our pastoral care team, and held with care until Reverend McCarr returns. All that is ours, we give our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build a common God and make our own days glad.
Well, wow. It's nice to be home, and such a nice welcome. Those of you who might know me, this is my home congregation. I am Jerry Devis's partner, who faithfully comes here every Sunday, and I'm sure many of you know him. But, you know, it really is wonderful and a blessing to me as I look out and as you each came up, and I recognized how much of you as a congregation I have taken into my ministry, and I thank you for that. No matter where I go and where I serve, I always think of West Shore. The people, the events, the experiences, the things that you taught me. A crazy Jew Catholic person who came into Unitarian kind of like, who are these people? And little did I know then that I would actually embrace this faith and actually lead others into it, as well as have the opportunity to minister in it. So it's a tribute to each of you and what you have done for me, and I thank you. And in my absence, what you have done for my partner, your support in how Pissy charters the aesthetics committee and tries to bring a little bit of art and aesthetics to this building. And but today we really want to talk about what's the glue that holds us together. You know, if you're going to get some intellectual sermon today, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. But I hope that some of the things that I say will actually speak to you in a way that you will learn something in, as I share with you some of my experiences on this topic. A few weeks ago, while flying back to California after attending our General Assembly, commonly called GA, the person who was sitting in the seat next to me, who happened to be a minister friend of mine, who's actually preaching in my home congregation today. And we started talking about various things, and she said to me, you know, what do you think is the glue that holds us together as you use? And that got me thinking, and I'd like to share with you in these next moments what I think that glue is. Have you ever had those moments in your lives when you're in them and you somehow know that this is going to be a significant moment? And such was the day in June of 2018 when an African American choir and a South African Unitarian choir came together and provided music that spoke of the importance of community and how, as a faith, no matter where we live, what our background or financial means might be, we can come together in a community of hope and love and support. And I've often reflected on that moment and what it represented at that time. I was serving as the interim minister for the Cape Town Unitarian Church. Yes, there is a Unitarian church in Cape Town, South Africa. And yes, it's over 150 years old. So But I had been living and working in South Africa for a little over a month, and I received a call, actually an email, contacted by the minister of the UU congregation in San Francisco. And the minister explained that his church choir was coming and touring South Africa, and they wanted to do a concert with us. Of course, I responded, well, of course, knowing that we had no choir, no choir director. We did have someone who could play the organ, and we had someone who could play the piano, and they really, thank goodness for that, because when I first arrived there, they said, oh, we can't sing, and the reason why they couldn't sing was because no one was leading them, so I started leading them and singing, God forbid. Dave Blazer wouldn't let me in his choir, but anyway, just kidding. You know, I told the church president, hey, you know, we're going to have a Unitarian choir from San Francisco, and they're going to want us to do a concert with them. She goes, what? And I said, oh, it's okay, it'll work out, wondering how it would work out, but as we planned together and we set a date for a choir rehearsal, still no choir director, and that particular Sunday, the rehearsal was scheduled for Tuesday. And that particular Sunday, the service started, and I watched an African woman come in, sit down on the front row, and we started singing, and I was leading it, and there was this like loud, melodic voice just bellowing this beautiful, beautiful music, and I looked, where is that coming from? Because I knew it wasn't coming from me. And lo and behold, I looked over, and Celeste was her name, and she was singing, and she was happy about it. And so I knew, we have our choir director. You know, this happens many times as ministers. We kind of watch what people do, and we go, Not that it ever happens here, so I went up to Celeste, and I said, hey, we're putting together a choir. We could really use your expertise. And she goes, I've never been a choir director. And I said, oh, it's okay. It'll be easy. So she put a choir together, and we started practicing, and she taught all 15 of us a lot about music, and particularly how to sing together. And so the day came, the choir from San Francisco, all 65 of them, came, and we met, and the service began, and when it came our turn, we went up and we sang some African folk songs and some other things, and then it was decided that we'd sing a song, Siyahamba, which you find actually in your teal hymnal, which was very important to South Africans because this was a song that they sang during the apartheid years about freedom and marching and other things. And so it was decided that we would perform it 3 times. First time we'd sing it in Afrikaans. Second time through, we'd sing it in Zulu. And then the third time, we'd sing it in English. So we went through and sang it in Afrikaans, and the congregation was responding. And then we sang it in Zulu, which is what it was written in. It was great. And we began to sing in English. All of a sudden, there was this roar from behind us. And the choir from San Francisco started singing with us. And it was such a sense of community and spirit that if all of the people who had gone before for that small Unitarian congregation and helped to build it, as if they were there, as the rafters were lifted. It was really a connection through music, a connection that logically, when you thought about it, how can a small congregation of over 100 and a building that only can basically hold maybe 120 pushing it, and yet more than half of the people were the choir. But that didn't matter that day. Those in the congregation chipped in, and we sang it a 4th time. And that's what I talk about when I talk about some glue that holds us together. It's those experiences that bring us together. Most of the people in that choir had never, in my Unitarian choir of Cape Town, had never really sung, but on that day, they sang. And I had many other experiences in South Africa. They changed my life. I witnessed how different cultures can come together and find commonality. And South Africa is still dealing with the results of apartheid and the effects of that on it. But they're still, we're able to embrace the teachings of Unitarianism and work together to combat many of the challenges that they face. In my work as an interim minister, I work with congregations who are in transition. Usually it's a case of a minister has left, sometimes the minister's retired, sometimes the minister has been asked to leave. In all those situations, it's always I arrive and it's in transition. And I sit there and I kind of look at them and think, well, I wonder, how do they tick? What keeps them together? What keeps people coming back? And I've learned many lessons as serving as a minister, and have come to believe that our need for community aids each of us in being willing to give some part of ourself for the privilege of being a whole. Let me illustrate by sharing with you something that occurred in the congregation in California in Santa Rosa, which is about an hour drive north of San Francisco. We're up in the wine country of beautiful Sonoma County. And as a minister, I have a fund which is called the Minister's Discretionary Fund. And the purpose of this fund is to assist the minister in being able to provide financial need for families or individuals on a case-by-case situation. It's called discretionary because it's up to the minister to determine how those funds will be used and to whom. And so this past March, a minister colleague referred to me a young family. She didn't have the funds to help them because her church was closing, which was a Presbyterian church in the area. And so the family stopped by the church and I met with them, listened to their story. They had 4 children, a 6-month-old baby, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And by observing the parents' interaction with their children, it was quickly apparent to me that they loved them, and they were doing the best job they could, taking care of them, given the circumstances that they found themselves in. The father, Mark, explained that he had been laid off from his job, they had spent their savings, and when losing his job within a short amount of time, they lost their housing. They had no family in the area, no relatives, and they were not aware of the resources in the county that helped families in their similar situation. So when they came to me, they had been living in their car for about a month. And I could tell by talking with them that I knew my own congregation in Santa Rosa, that they would embrace these people. They would be willing to help them. And so that Sunday, the family came, and with their permission, I shared their story. And in my discussion with Mark and Teresa, I was able to find out what their needs were and how we might be able to help them. And over the next few weeks, members, both active and inactive, stepped forth, donated clothes, food, and other items. The church, through the minister's fund, I was able to provide shelter for them. My staff at the church connected the family with all sorts of resources that were more than willing to help them. It was overwhelming to me to see how the members of the congregation responded. A member had an opening at his company that Mark was qualified to fill. Mark interviewed and was offered the job. Another member worked in a social service area and was able to get Mark and Teresa connected with a nonprofit organization that was designed to help find housing for families. Within a couple of months, Mark was working full-time at a job that he loved. They were living in housing that met their needs, and Teresa, his wife, had enrolled in schooling that was training her to be a nurse. I witnessed the congregation coming together with each of them willing to give some part of themselves for being the privilege of being part of the whole. What else can we define as the glue that holds us together as UU? I believe it is our love and commitment to doing what we can to make this a better world and to stand up and show up when unjust actions are being taken. You know, last month was Pride Month across the country. It was a time when, you know, we were just celebrating our LGBTQA1. Hopefully it gets no more letters on the alphabet, but anyway, to celebrate that. And it was also a time across the country when a small group had decided that they were not going to stand for having a month of celebrating gay pride, and especially you're not going to stand for allowing libraries to put up pride displays with LGBTQ plus books, and especially not allow a drag queen story hour, which had been planned at many libraries across the U.S. So in the county where I live, Sonoma County Library System, such events had been planned, and in May, many of the libraries in the county area started receiving death threats that if they displayed LGBTQ plus books in their libraries, they could incite demonstrations. In one such library in Petaluma, California, which is about 16 miles south of Santa Rosa, was told that if they didn't cancel their drag queen reading hour, that at Saturday, June 17th at 11, that a demonstration would happen. Saturday came, and the demonstrators were there, but much to a surprise of them, the UU Petaluma church members, as well as members from my congregation, UU Santa Rosa, showed up in large numbers that outnumbered the demonstrators. And we had even brought rainbow donuts to share with the demonstrators. We even made the national news, but the drag queen story hour went on as planned. The next Saturday, drag queen story hour was scheduled at the Santa Rosa Library at 1 a.m., and many from the Petaluma UU Church and my church congregation and others showed up, and 5 demonstrators showed up to protest, but when they saw the crowd of people, they quickly left. I spoke to many of the demonstrators that showed up to support the drag queen story hour, and they had a feeling of unity and pride that UUs had come together. Coming together against unjust causes is a glue that can hold us together. As a minister, I've also witnessed other things, such as the desire to nurture the best in ourselves so we might give it to others. That's what I believe also keeps us together. And I witnessed this at West Shore several years ago when the Aesthetics Committee for one summer created what they called live art. I'm sure many of you might remember that. What they did under Jerry Davis's guidance, they chose famous pieces of art that people could recreate. And a large picture frame was created by Bob France and secured to a small stage connected to a large vacant wall in the rotunda. And each Sunday, throughout the summer, pieces of art were recreated. I especially remember Andy Warhol's 100 Marilyns. Now, if you are familiar with that piece, it's Marilyn just keeps repeating herself. And we didn't have 100 Marilyns, I don't even think we had 10, I can't remember, maybe 8 or 9. And the task they had was to look at the photograph and recreate it the best they could with the makeup and costumes that they saw in the famous painting. Well, these 8 or 9 women of West Shore took on the task. They created the look of famous paintings and really did an outstanding job. And they all laughed, had fun, and that Sunday, the members of the congregation laughed and had fun. Throughout the rest of the summer, other members participated. A group of women created the Degas painting of the ballerinas. We had the famous painting created of Kiss, which are the 2 people who are right here in the audience today. But the point was, members came together and laughed and celebrated. And through that live art, it did bring people together and created a fun experience. How can we forget that as Unitarians, we have learned how to share openness, caring for each other in good times and bad, laughter, working on projects and events, singing, having fun, and eating. When I'm asked by people outside of our faith, what is our strength? I always respond, it is in the strength of the community. I was reminded yesterday how important it is to not assume that something is true without checking it out. My partner's nephew, Brandon, is getting married over Labor Day. And when I arrived home a few days ago, Jerry showed me the wedding invitation. And it was addressed, Jerry Devis and guests. Now, I immediately got offended. I was not a guest. I'd been a part of the family and had known Brandon for over 15 years. I thought, how can this be? Am I really welcome? Should I not go? And my first reaction was to tell Jerry, okay, I'm not going, you're going. But in his typical calm manner, those of you who know him, never gets angry, said, well, let's not turn this into a drama event. But I wasn't going to let it go. And so I was going to call up his nephew and, just have a discussion with him, tell him what I thought. And I finally decided that I would send Brandon a text. And in a non-threatening way, just shared with him I was surprised that I was being considered a guest and told him that I would still be coming, but that I thought that being considered a guest was sending a message. Within a few minutes, I received a text back apologizing that he said he had been selling his house and moving, getting ready for the wedding, and that it was really an oversight on his part. And yes, he wanted me to attend, and he shared that his future wife's father was gay and that Carolyn, his future wife, was very accepting of that. I share this with you because I believe it has a lesson that we can all learn from. I know that as you use many times in our congregation, something happens between either the minister or between individuals, and some of you get offended and begin to assume things about the other person, and you, or about the minister and you seldom follow through and check out to see if your assumptions are true. This leads to more confusion and at times anger towards the person or towards the minister. Our tendency is to hold that in and not go to the person or to the minister and to share with them our confusion, how we felt when such and such occurred. My experience brought home to me the importance of when we feel offended or wrongfully treated, we need to go to the party that offended us and explain to them in a non-threatening manner how we feel about what happened. This won't solve all the issues, I can promise that, but I can promise I believe in most cases it will clarify in our own minds about the actions of the other person and what was their intent. Not this has happened to any of you here today, but if it has, don't assume that you know why the actions of the other party. Not assuming and asking for clarification in our UU communities will help us to be a part of that glue that holds us together. As Unitarian Universalists, we are an odd lot. You know, when I first came here, I thought, who are these people? My mother had always warned me, stay away from the UUs. Being the good Jewish mother that she is. And you know, we don't always agree with each other. In fact, many times we don't always, you know, want to follow or do things, but there is always this sense, this glue, that we all have a home, a place where we can feel welcomed and a part of a community. And I know that some of you might not feel as much a part of this community as you wish, and to you I say, get involved. Share your talents, your skills, your ideas. They might not always be appreciated, but share them anyway. The UU community is yours, and you have every right to take part of it and be a part of it. One of the things that I share with new members when they join, that if in the first 3 months they don't get upset with some member, no matter, or disappointed, they're not involved enough. And you know, always remember, no matter, that this is your UU community, and you're welcome here, even with all your quirks, crazy ideas, sometimes ways of being. We can all learn from each other. I challenge each of you to think about that glue that holds this community together. If you're not feeling connected, do something to get more involved. That glue is the community that is where we find the strength, whether it be coming together to make music, helping others in need, sharing our talents to bring out the best part of ourselves, helping others to become their best selves, or being willing to have the courage to check out our assumptions with each other when we have been offended. Our actions, thoughts towards ourselves and others helps to build strength in our UU community. And it goes into the mix to be some of that glue that holds us together. May you celebrate who you are. May you celebrate you being a UU, and may you celebrate this West Shore community, and always know that you have a home, that this is yours, that you have a place here, and that you are welcome here. And in those times when you wonder, just sit back and say, I need to get more involved. Thank you. It's so nice to be with you. May it be so.
Our closing words today are by Reverend Teresa Soto, neither division nor divided. People are not long-division problems. Their resources almost never divide evenly into their concerns, which is how we end up with remainders of fear and anger, and such tentative beauty, having only recently been liberated from the imposition of thousands of inapplicable shames. People do not imagine being messy and unresolved until their broken hearts remain unmentionable. Eventually, point 3 repeating, awkwardly at first, and then with an intonation and rhythm meant to stimulate being just fine. No problem. People are not long division problems. You cannot, should you, meaning well, try this, fix them, or solve them. Reminder, they will almost never come out even. What you can do is be a welcoming in a wounded and suspicious world. You can recognize the person as who they are. You can assume that without the gift of their humanity, even when it is complicated, none of the sum of us can arrive at the answer of who we are meant to be, collective and whole. Blessed be. Yep. Extinguished chalice. We extinguish this flame but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we meet again.
Right, please join in singing 1028, The Fire of Commitment. So I need to waste a little bit of time because David Blazer needs to make his quest to the organ. But just kind of speaking of that, you need to be really proud. He really represented this congregation and also UU's greatly at our last General Assembly. He was one of the music people.
Go, David.
It was really great, and I remember in one of the sessions, the gentleman who was kind of singing kind of had his own way, and I watched Dave, and Dave was okay, he's singing now, and he just kind of ad-libbed as he does, and so it was just great to be there, and also those from West Shore who were there, it was great to spend time with them as well. So, Dave, I turn it to you.